What's good? It's your boy Fanon. All right, this is going to be a post-fight review of J-Rock victory over Jarrett Hurd coming up right after this. Right. Great fight last night on the PBC between Jarrett Hurd, the former WBA and IBF world champion, and the new El Nuevo. I do believe that's how you say it. Many people on the chat were talking about that. J-Rock Julian Williams put on an absolutely terrific fight. First things first, my hat goes off to both these guys. That was an entertaining fight. That's what boxing's about. Two highly skilled fighters facing off against one another in a great action-packed fight. That fight it was good from the beginning all the way to the end. Congratulations to J-Rock. I'm certainly hoping we get to see a rematch. I would suspect that because Jarrett Hurd was the champion, and I do not believe that it was a mandatory fight, that hopefully he has a rematch clause and we can do that again. Although J-Rock won that fight, and I think J-Rock won that fight convincingly, you know, it's definitely interested enough to see that fight take place again. Terrific fight. So let's break it down real quick what happened. First, let's talk about what J-Rock did right. J-Rock did exactly what I thought he should do, which is get inside on Jarrett Hurd. He neutralized the length of Jarrett Hurd very well. As we know, Jarrett Hurd is a tall 154 pounder, a big 154 pounder who over his last several fights liked to walk through punches and would wind up catching the guy moving away, boxing on the outside. That's what Austin Trout did to him. And that is also what Landy Lara did with Jarrett Hurd, just staying on the outside, just boxing him. But eventually the pressure of Jarrett Hurd got to them. And in the later rounds, he was able to wear them down and able to get, the stoppage in the case of Austin Trout and a 12th round knockdown in the case of Landy Lara that wound up getting him the decision. That's not what J-Rock did. J-Rock didn't allow him to do that. J-Rock was taking the fight to Jarrett Hurd pretty much from the beginning of the fight, was able to get a knockdown. I do believe the knockdown was in the second round. And he stayed on the inside a considerable amount, and kept putting the weight, his body weight on Jarrett Hurd. He was hitting him with uppercuts to the body, nice body shots. The right hook and the left hook on the inside was just there for him all night. And eventually, man, it really took its toll on Jarrett Hurd. And he just kept wearing him down and winning the rounds. And once it got to the later half of the fight, J-Rock was not able to, Jarrett Hurd wasn't able to have worn J-Rock down, and he really couldn't make that late push, right? Because he had been worn down with having to do a lot of fighting and a lot of pushing and a lot of grabbing, not grabbing, but a lot of pushing, laying on the chest, a lot of body work on the inside that just zapped Jarrett Hurd's energy. And, that's pretty much how the fight happened, man. J-Rock is back. J-Rock, is, proved something in boxing that I think is very important for people to see, is that just because you lose to somebody, like in the instance he had lost to Jermall Charlo by knockout, and he came, back in the next championship shot he got against a 154-pound champion, there he goes, man. And he's able to pull it off. He's able to get the victory. And now he's at the highest level of that he could have hoped for his career. The fact that he had a loss didn't end his career. And it was what is called a minor setback for a major comeback in the case of J-Rock. So man, my hat goes off to him. Shout out to the cats in Philadelphia who were talking about J-Rock being too much and too highly skilled for Jarrett Hurd. You were right. Now on to the Jarrett Hurd side of things. Jarrett Hurd is going to have to go back to the drawing board and see what he's got to do to switch things up for the rematch. And again, the lesson that was taught by J-Rock, that we saw in J-Rock, and we've seen with other people too. We've seen it with Bernard Hopkins in his loss to Roy Jones Jr. You've seen it in the knockout losses of Lennox Lewis to Oliver McCall and Lennox Lewis to Hasim Rahman, that just because you lose a fight, that does not mean everything is over. So the same thing should apply to J-Rock. J-Rock's just got to go back, take a really hard look in the mirror and see what it is that he needs to do in order to overcome the disadvantages that he has against J-Rock. And it'll be up to his trainer and himself to see, you know, what the problems were. What did he get too happy? Did he overlook J-Rock? I think there's a chance that he might have overlooked J-Rock. It's ironic that as he was talking about the next fight that he wanted to do after J-Rock being, you know, going for the WBC belt, obviously, you know, he's seeing that he might be able to get a fight with Tony Harrison, who he had beaten previously. But hey, man, you're going to have to get that belt back before you can get anywhere near Tony Harrison. Same thing happens to Jermall Charlo. See, this is just irony, man. It's funny. J-Rock was out there, you know, talking about how Jermall Charlo was broken because Jermall Charlo had lost to Tony Harrison and they didn't like the things that, you know, the approach that Jermall Charlo took in the press conference with Tony Harrison. Now, hey, man, chickens came home to roost. Let me say that slowly. Your chickens came home to roost. Now, what are you going to do? Now, that's my take on. But in order to beat Julian Williams, Jarrett Hurd, I think, is going to have to improve his defense. That is his Achilles heel. He takes too many shots, and this fighter was a different fighter than the last two guys he fought. That's why I said that I was riding with the upset. I was like, man, I got to jump into the upset camp. And I said that a couple days before the fight happened because, you know, it just appeared to me that, you know, I looked at the last couple guys he fought. You know, Austin Trout won a lot of rounds against him. Landy Lara won a lot of rounds against him, and he was playing defense with his face. Now you got a guy who also is a better boxer than him and who's younger, has more stamina, but he also had that Philly style where he can get in there and he can mix it up with you and wear you down with shots to the body and all that infighting. So, you know, it wound up being the case. He's going to have to do something, man. He's going to have to learn how to slip punches on the inside. Don't be so easy to hit with them with 3-punch combinations. I mean, J-Rock was lighting off 3-punch combinations on him all night long. And when you got a guy standing there smothering you, hitting you with 3 shots, pivoting out, man, this is going to be a long night, man. So he's got to go back to school. He's got to figure out what he can do with that. And it's going to, in my opinion, it's all going to be around defense and not smothering his punches. Because when he was on it, J-Rock was on the inside, on chest to chest, shoulder to shoulder. He really couldn't put anything into his punches. Now, when J-Rock did go out on the outside and box with him, there was another problem because J-Rock was just hitting him with that jab, timing him with that jab. And Jarrett Hurd is coming with them long, loopy punches, you know, trying to really put some heat on him. And J-Rock was able just to come inside, you know, jab him, come inside those shots. And man, he's back in there getting worn out again. Man, anyway, just all in all, great fight. Now, that also says a lot for the 154-pound division. We got a lot of parity for those belts with the IBF, the WBA, and the WBC. There's a lot of parity with those fighters. I think that any one of those 4 guys can beat the other 4 guys. Now, we got a fight coming up in a couple months. Is it later, a month or 2? I can't remember if the Tony Harrison and Jermall Charlo fight is in June or July, but that's coming up in the summer. And that right there is going to be, you know, a rematch of a fight where Tony Harrison beat Jermall Charlo. There's a lot of back and forth about who really won the fight. You know, I tend to respect the judge's call. And since, you know, Tony Harris won the fight, Tony Harris is right. Tony Harris just got to, you know, Jermall has to, you know, accept the fact that he lost that fight, figure out what it is that he did wrong. Personally, I believe what he did wrong was that he was just too aggressive and he allowed Tony Harrison just to outbox him and counterpunch and do all that. I think he needs to make Tony Harrison be a little bit of the aggressor. But that's going to be a good fight. And the good thing about this 154-pound division is all these guys are fighting each other, with the exception of the WBO belt and Jaime Munguia. But, you know, Jaime Munguia ain't going to beat none of those guys anyway. You know, but so I don't see Undisputed coming out 154, but, you know, potentially we could get you know, somebody holding all three of the belts, and hopefully that can happen, you know, in the December time frame. But then again, Jarrett Hurd probably does give that rematch, so maybe it could happen in the second part, you know, the early part of 2020. But anyway, it is what it is. Let me know what you think. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe and hit the bell icon and all that good stuff, and we'll get back with you. Peace.